All right, we want to welcome everybody out to October's Spanish Fork Salem Chamber of Commerce new networking lunch. First off, we want to thank the school district for providing us to come here today and allowing us to be in their conference room and spend some time with them. And we also want to thank Chick-fil-A for providing the food. Scott Rasband with Chick-fil-A has been a good ally with the chamber, so we want to thank them. Real quick, I just got a few notes for the as far as goes for the chamber that I want to bring up. There's going to be the board elections coming up real soon, so if you want to become a board member on the Chamber of Commerce, be thinking about that right now, and we got to have them in by the end of this month. This Saturday coming up, we've got trick-or-treating on Main Street, on downtown Maine. Oh, sorry, the following Saturday. I thought, okay. The following Saturday, so what's that date? Sorry. The 27th. So, and it's going to be, it's from 1 to 3:30, or 1 to 3, and it's a good event. We've got to get a lot of people coming out. So, we also need some volunteers, if we could, to help hand out candy for the chamber right there on at the Memorial Park. We got the candy and everything. If there's somebody who would like to volunteer to help hand that out, let us know, or talk to Heather or Julie. Also, the farmers market, if there's any volunteers for the farmers market on that same day or next Saturday. So the 27th, if there's anybody that is willing to help with the farmers market that day, please let us know. We could use somebody to help out there. Anyways, now let's go ahead and we'll get started. I'm gonna actually turn the time over to Lana Hiskey, and she's gonna introduce or kind of go over what we're gonna go over today. So I'm gonna turn time over to her. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks so much. He's a product of Nebo School District. We love him. Today, we were asked to give you some information about the bond presentation, and I asked our superintendent, Rick Nielsen, if he would do that for us. So he'll be doing that here shortly. I just want to give you a little bit of background about our superintendent and a little bit about our school district. So we have over 33,000 students. That's bigger than BYU. I know that sounds crazy, but it is bigger than BYU. We have just over 4,000 employees. And Superintendent Rick Nielsen, he's been our superintendent since 2010. So he's going on 8 years. Prior to serving as superintendent, his career included being a 6th grade school teacher and a district level administrator. He was a principal of Westside Elementary, Art City Elementary, Reese Elementary, and then he was the elementary director before becoming assistant superintendent and then superintendent. He serves on a number of boards, including the trustee of Utah Valley University. He's the co-chair of the UVU MTech K-16 Alliance, chair of the BYU Public School Partnership, and the Utah County Board of Health. He's also on the Nebo Education Foundation Board, and we're so grateful for that. And he's on the Nebo Credit Union Board. He grew up here in Spanish Fork, married Karen from Mapleton. He and his wife have 5 children. He says that in his leisure time, but I don't really see him taking any leisure time, but in his leisure time, he enjoys reading a variety of books, attending the theater, and also attending student activities. So you'll see him at lots of ball games and those types of activities. And we're going to go ahead and turn the time over to Superintendent Nielsen.
It is great to be with you. Thanks for making time to come and be with us for a little bit here today. This is the 3rd Chamber of Commerce that I've presented to in the last month. I presented to the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce about a month or so ago. They've actually given us a letter of endorsement supporting this bond. The Utah Valley Chamber did. We've presented to the Springville Chamber of Commerce and now to the Spanish Fork Salem Chamber. So thank you. We value our relationships with you. We know that we are you and you are us. We really recognize the criticality of our business partners in educating children, and so thank you. As Lana said, I'm also a product of Nebo School District. I grew up here in Spanish Fork. My parents are Clyde and Norma Nielsen. If you know who they are. My dad worked down here at Stone Drug for a lot of years, and I think is matriculated over to SOS Drug in Springville for a couple of days a week now. So my mom was a school teacher here in town, taught at the intermediate school, English, and then went and taught French at Spanish Fork High School after having taught at Springville High School. And then, as Lana said, my wife is a Springville High grad. So we are living proof that a devil and a Don can peacefully coexist for at least 28 years. We'll keep you posted. So interestingly enough, we live on the East Bench here in Spanish Forks, and now our children go to Maple Mountain High School. So we learn to get along, all of us in our household. It doesn't matter our school allegiances. So anyway, it is sure good to be with you today. What I've got is I've got a PowerPoint presentation. You are actually the last group that I will share this with. We've calculated, and between my staff and I, we've done over 100 bond presentations. We have worked super hard to make sure that we have the information out on this bond. We've done Facebook Live on several of the presentations, so we can extend to literally thousands of people. And so you're the culminating group, and I truly am privileged and honored to be with you today among such good friends and good supporters. So what we'll do is, right out of the gate, I'll show what's just about a 3.5 minute video that is the best summary video, if you will, on our bond presentation. You'll understand the whole presentation in that 3.5 minutes, and then I'll stand up and spend about another 30 minutes going through some slides that just put a little more meat on the bones. That's really my objective. And then if you'll hold all your questions to the end, we've just learned that helps things to flow a little bit better. So video, PowerPoint with some presentation. If you've got any questions, write them down, and then I'll work to answer those at the end a little bit. So, all right.
This is the Taylor family, and like you, they live in the Nebo School District. Over the next 10 years, Nebo will grow by more than 4,000 additional students. With this much growth, it's easy to see how our schools are getting more crowded every year. So how does this affect the Taylor family? Well, the kids are worried about their schools being too crowded. Mom and Dad Taylor are concerned about safety issues with aging high schools such as Payson High, Spanish Fork High, and Springville High. In addition, Grandma and Grandpa are worried about how the bond will affect their property taxes. Over the past year, Nebo asked for parent and community input through surveys. Parental input strongly supported 1. Return to the middle school model, 2. Create straight alignment patterns, and 3. Rebuild the 3 aging high schools. How will this help with student growth? Building 3 new middle schools will take 6th grade students out of the elementary schools and 7th grade students out of the junior high schools. This plan will reduce the need to build elementary and junior high schools in the near future. Our current alignment pattern is split between schools. Once the new middle schools are created, we'll be able to implement a straight alignment pattern. This concept will have 6th and 7th grade students together in middle schools, and 8th and 9th grade students together in junior high. To help with the increasing number of students, provide the middle school model with straight alignment patterns, and to rebuild older schools, a bond will be on the November 6, 2018 ballot for Nebo District. This will help build 3 new middle schools and rebuild the 3 existing older high schools. How will this bond impact the Taylor family's property taxes? The bond will do a number of things, but the one thing it won't do is raise the property tax rate. How is this possible? Not only are there more taxpayers and more businesses in the area, but Nebo also has a AAA rating, which is compared to Mr. Taylor having a personal credit score of 850. Nebo carefully structured previous bonds to allow no tax rate increase for new bonds. Therefore, taxpayers will see no increase in the yearly property tax from Nebo with the new bond unless their property values increase. The 2018 bond for $298 million will provide 6 schools, 3 new middle schools, and the rebuild of the 3 older high schools. The bond funds can be used for building construction and not for employee salaries. The Taylor family and many others love Nebo School District because of its safe environment and quality of education from excellent teachers. With the 2018 bond, Nebo will continue to build a successful future for all residents. With less crowded schools, the middle school straight alignment pattern, and the rebuild of older high schools, there are greater opportunities for Nebo students. The Taylor family and you can vote in one of 3 ways: mail-in voting, early voting, or simply walk into a polling location on November 6th and cast your vote. Thank you for your time, and happy voting!
So hopefully when I'm done, you don't think, wow, he should have just stopped after the 3.5-minute video. We understood it at that point in time. So just really some things we'd like to highlight. The very first slide said focused on student growth. When you work in my business, you're always focused on student growth, right? We're focused on student academic growth. We're concerned about student social and emotional well-being. And sitting in the chair I sit in and working with our school board, we also have to be focused on student enrollment growth and what to do as we have more and more students moving into the Nebo School District boundaries. There's a couple of 3 quick slides right here. I won't read them to you. Depends on what report you look at. Utah is consistently recognized as one of the top 3 fastest growing states in the United States. And then when you think about Utah County is, if not the fastest, one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Utah, and then Nebo School District, as the 6th largest district in the state of Utah, is one of the fastest growing districts in the state of Utah. Just something I'll parenthetically add really quick. I was at the Envisioning Utah meeting on Monday of this week up in Salt Lake, where they did some recognitions and honored some folks. But part of that is they were talking about growth, and they announced a new initiative called Valley Visioning. Valley Visioning. Now this is out of Envision Utah, out of Salt Lake, and their Valley Visioning emphasis that they just announced on Monday is all about Utah County. They put up on the screen kind of heat maps, if you will, of the areas that are developable land and what's coming between 2050 and 2065. And Nebo District is lit up in red and orange and yellow. And so if you've listened to any presentations at all, most of the time business folks have. I have to oversell this a little bit or overtalk this a little bit with folks that aren't in business, but the business folks that I've talked about know what's coming to the communities. So incidentally, I was sitting next to a gentleman named Randy Woodbury. So if you know anything about growth in Nebo School District and what's going on with business, down at the Highway 6, I-15 interchange, his group is the group overseeing the development down there. That's who I was sitting next to at lunch, and we had lengthy conversations about the growth that is coming to Utah County. And so really for me, it was just validating that our initiative as a school district to work to stay up with and in front of growth really is a well thought out and purposely targeted initiative. One last thing on growth we'd like to put up. This shows just our growth from 1998 to 2018. The 32,826 number was our 2017 October 1 count. When we did this presentation, we didn't have the official October 1 count for this year, but the October 1 count is, I think, 33,133. So you can see that even last year it was 32,826, and this year it's 33,133. So we're on a steady incline here in Nebo District. More so than the numbers, my reason that I like to put this up and talk about it briefly is just so you can see the trend line. Clearly the trend line in Nebo School District is that our enrollments are growing up. We may or not be spot on what the numbers are moving forward. Our crystal ball isn't any better than anybody else's crystal ball, but I think it's pretty clear to everybody that I've talked to that student enrollment growth continues to happen in Nebo School District. So really, there's 3 options that, as we've talked with the board, that seem to be the options with our kind of growth, with our growth trend and what's going on in our district, that there's really 3 options for handling growth. One is that you go out and bond, which means you go borrow money. You go borrow money and you build new schools. In other words, you expand your footprint to handle the more students that are coming. And bonding is the mechanism for raising money to build new schools. It's kind of like a mortgage for a homeowner, to explain that to you maybe that way. The other couple of things are you build portable classrooms. So if you're not going to build more school space, then you build portable classrooms and you place those on playgrounds and on green space and things like that. And portable classrooms are an okay temporary solution. We have portable classrooms right now in our district, but that's not a good long-term solution In fact, it causes problems for you long term if you try to have that be your solution to growth. The other thing is you just have increased class size. You say, well, we're not going to have more square footage through new buildings or portables, so we'll put more kids in the same square footage that we have. And fundamentally, that ultimately gets to the point where it drives up class size. So needless to say, our perspective on that is that the best solution is to say, let's go to our public and put a bond in front of them and ask them to give us approval to go out and borrow money to construct new schools. Part of this bond process that we did is we did a couple of parent surveys. We probably haven't done a good enough job also pointing out that what we did with all of the survey data is we pulled a parent committee together. We gave the parent committee all of the survey data, and we said to the parent committee, okay, based on all the things that you're hearing anecdotally from parents, but all of the things that you're seeing parents and teachers told us in the survey, give us some recommendations. So fundamentally, this is what bubbled up, is they said, in addition to growth, parents told us we really like straight alignment patterns, which require middle schools, and we were told get those 3 veteran high schools rebuilt. That's really the conclusion that was drawn from the data that we gathered. So really, we took those things under consideration as we built our bond plan. So right out of the gate, we say, well, clearly we want to address growth because kids are coming. So by moving to a middle school model, which is part of what I was just talking about, I'll explain it a little bit more in just a couple of minutes. When you move to a middle school model, you pull the 6th grade students out of the elementary schools and you put them in middle schools. That frees up about 2,500 seats in elementary schools for kids that are moving in. So you create enrollment capacity in your elementary schools. You pull the 7th graders out of the junior highs and you put them in the middle school with 6th graders. So the middle school will have 6th and 7th grade in it. For those of you that remember, we were on that model until about 2005. And so we're looking to go to the middle school model again. That doesn't free up quite as much space in the elementary schools because we'll move from 7 elementaries to 5 elementaries, or sorry, 7 junior highs to 5 junior highs, but it does free up some space in the junior highs. And then lastly, when you get those middle schools built, then it creates that straight alignment pattern. Now, I like the way the video shows the straight alignment pattern because the school circles move. You can actually visually see that on the video that you already watched. But fundamentally, and I'll just talk it through for this area here since we're in Spanish Fork. Right now, Diamond Fork Junior High up here on East Center Street, a portion of those students go to Maple Mountain High and a portion of those students go to Spanish Fork High. Every student at Spanish Fork Junior goes to Spanish Fork High. So what we've consistently heard over the last many years is if you've got a 9th grader at Diamond Fork Junior High, it is very difficult because it feels like to the parents, like as they go to the high school, that every one of their friends went to the other high school. I see some heads nodding. I don't think it's statistically possible for every friend to go to the other high school, but it feels like that if you're 15, right? And so really that's what we're talking about with straight alignment patterns, is by building 3 middle schools and then by having Diamond Fork become a middle school and Mount Nebo and Payson become a middle school, we would then have 5 middle schools, 5 junior highs, 5 high schools. So once a student leaves 5th grade, I'll go back to Diamond Fork now. Once a student leaves 5th grade and they attend Diamond Fork Middle School, as a 6th grader, every single student at Diamond Fork will go to Spanish Fork Junior High. Every one of them. They'll just go there as a group. And then every student at Spanish Fork High will go to, or at Spanish Fork Junior will go to Spanish Fork High. They'll go as a group. So really, 6 through 12, it'll be the same boundary. We'll just have one secondary boundary for each of the 5 high schools. So that's what we mean by straight alignment pattern. I can talk more about that later on if you'd like. Why rebuild our high schools? Really, this slide talks about we've just got some seismic challenges, we've got technology challenges, we want to reduce the need for portables. A rebuild of the high schools allows us actually to increase their capacity somewhat. So a rebuild of the high schools also helps us with enrollment growth. Our high schools were built in the 60s. That was an unfortunate time to build high schools because actually schools built in the 40s are built much better than schools built in the 60s. Schools built in the 60s, you didn't have seismic things in place. The building materials that were being used were typically lower grade materials. So we've actually produced a couple of brochures that folks can have. In fact, Lana's probably put them on your table, that are a little deeper dive on why rebuild the high schools, because we have had some questions on that. But in short, the answer is this. Moms and dads said to us, get the high schools rebuilt. We talked with architects about that. We talked with engineers about that. We talked with construction folks about that. And they said to us, yes, that's a wise investment. It's better to rebuild than it is to try to go in and refurbish and remodel. And again, that little handout you have talks about that a little bit. So anyway, so we're saying, okay, moms and dads, we listen to you. Employees, we listen to you. We've looked at our budget, and our bond proposal is to build 3 middle schools and to rebuild those 3 high schools. Now, just quickly, project location. I'll talk about this a little more on the next slide, but really the purpose on this slide is to show that down on the bottom left there is a purple star. That is Apple Valley Elementary in Santaquin. That is the very last school we built from our 2009 bond, and those other 6 stars show the 3 middle schools and the 3 high schools. We would rebuild the high schools on their current sites. And then, again, I'll talk the middle school locations in just a minute. What I like to point out from this particular slide here is that our board, our district, are very committed to our patrons north, south, east, west. We're making sure that as there is growth and there is need for facilities anywhere in Nebo School District, that we really pay attention to building in all areas of our district. This is a slide I'll spend maybe a little more time on than most slides, just because it's got so much meat on it. So this talks about the schools. We've already named the 3 middle schools. The first middle school would start in February. So the first middle school would start 3.5 months from now. And we own ground on Woodland Hills Drive at about 340 South Woodland Hills Drive. So you could head there right now. If you're driving south and look off to the southeast, you'll see a 20-acre parcel, and that's where Valley View Middle School would be built. That would start in 2019 and would open in the fall of 2020. In the fall of 2020 is when the Salem Hills and Payson areas would move to that straight alignment pattern. So that's the year that Mount Nebo would become a middle school, Valley View would open as a middle school, and 6th graders would attend middle school in those areas starting in 2020. We would then open Maple Grove Middle School and Spring Canyon Middle School in the fall of 2021, just 1 year later. Spring Canyon will be built in Springville. We own ground in West Springville. If you're driving on 4 South and you know where Stonehenge is, it's a building there. There's a bunch of 3 to 4 story buildings under construction right now. We own property about 4 blocks straight south of those construction sites. So that's where Spring Canyon Middle School would be built. Maple Grove Middle School, I guess I can make this announcement officially for the first time in all of my meetings. This is kind of exciting, actually. We own property on Slant Road, but we've been looking for properties in Mapleton to build Maple Grove Middle School on. And just last Wednesday night, Mapleton City Council approved their half of the contract to purchase 20 acres of property from Mapleton City right along Highway 89, just north of the Abington, if you know where that is. So we've signed our side of the contract. Mapleton City has signed their side of the contract. Now, that doesn't guarantee we can build there. We just signed it a week ago. So we've got to do our due diligence. We got to make sure that soils work and elevations and roads and utilities. I mean, we've done our preliminary due diligence to the point where we believe it works, but we need to make sure all of those things work. But presuming that they all fall into place, that's where that school will be built, is there in Mapleton. It's actually just due east of Harvest Park, right across the street from Harvest Park, if you happen to know where that is. So So that's exciting. Those two schools would open in the fall of 2021. That is the year Diamond Fork would become a middle school. So the Spanish Fork, Mapleton, Springville area would move to the middle school model in the fall of 2021. We've got up there rebuild high school ABC. We have no idea the order in which the high schools will be rebuilt. We'll work with our architect to make determinations on that once the bond is passed. So one high school, though, will open in 2024, one will open in 2025, and one will open in 2026. Now, the last thing I just want to point out here, these are cost estimates. We've done our best to take inflation into consideration and project future costs for our projects. We estimate that these 6 projects will cost $345 million. We have a very conservative Board of Education. They're very fiscally responsible. We've got a great finance department, and we worked with the financial advisor for about 25 years now. And all of those folks working together have made it so that we actually are able to take $47 million of what's called capital money. So that's the money we get annually to focus on roof and carpet and sidewalk and asphalt, those kinds of things. We strategized so we can take $47 million of capital money and put that towards these 6 projects. The reason why that's good in my estimation for the taxpayers of Nebo District is, even though the projects are estimated to cost $345 million, we need to go to the taxpayers for a $298 million bond. Okay? Now, that's not chump change. I don't mean to try to make it sound like that's nothing. $298 million is a lot of money, and it's a big ask, but I do want our public to know that that is a very targeted amount with very thoughtful planning. Now, the thing that folks legitimately want to know every single time we put a bond out in front of the public is, okay, what's it going to do to my property taxes? That's a legitimate question. We're glad people ask it. We've structured this bond so there is no increase to the property tax rate. No property tax rate increase. We think that is significant. So I can't remember exactly what our property tax rate is. It's like 0.9028 or something like that right now. And that's what we're saying is that rate will stay the same. Stay the same at the current rate that's in place right now. So a couple of slides talk about how we can go out and borrow $298 million and not increase the tax rate. So let's talk that briefly. This one's kind of narrative. The next slide is a graphic that talks about it a little bit. So really the way you do that is you have growth coming into the district, then you have more taxpayers that are paying back the debt. So more taxpayers coming in help you to pay it off without increasing the tax rate for everybody. The other thing is we've structured our existing bonds in a way so that when we pay off current bonds, then we insert the new bonds in, and then we're able to keep those payments at the same tax rate. And then lastly, you go borrow the $298 million in increments over time as you need it. So it's not like this is maybe the one way it's not like a mortgage or a business loan. You don't go borrow all 298 on day one. You go borrow 30 million one year, 40 the next, 60 the next, 18 the next, whatever it is you need to do your construction projects, you go out and borrow the money in those increments. So that then spreads the payments out. And this is graphically how we show all of this. That black line that has a slight incline up and then flattens out, that's indicating that there's more taxpayers that are coming into the district that allow us to have an increased capacity to pay the bond back. The dark blue bars show our existing debt and show that that gets paid off over time. And then that light blue area points out that that's the place where we can go borrow the $298 million without a tax rate increase. Now, there are two very important points I want to make while you're looking at this slide, because we've worked super hard to be way transparent on this. Okay? The first one is this. Somebody's dollar amount might go up because we're keeping the tax rate the same. If your home or business, I guess in this case, if it's reassessed and the assessment goes up, applying the same tax rate to a higher assessed value would make a dollar amount go up. So the county assessor is the individual who makes the decisions on home and business assessment. That's not Nebo District doing that. Okay, so the county assessor does that. We have taken that into account, trying to figure out how to, and that's part of that black line going up, as we do realize that there might be some increased assessed valuations. The other thing that I clearly want to point out is, if you can see on the chart behind me, in 2032 is when our current bonds from 09 and before, 2032 is when those would be paid off. By doing this new bond, we would extend the life of our debt out till about 2040. So we're keeping the tax rate the same, but we are extending the life of our debt payments. Probably a really poor man's version of this that I've been sharing because it makes sense to me and I'm a simpleton. Let's say you bought a home and you got a 15-year mortgage. You had 2 kids, and here you are 8 years later, and now you've got 6 kids. And you say, we need more square footage. But we can't afford a higher monthly payment than we're currently making. That's our maximum capacity in our budget. I think most moms and dads in that scenario would go into their financial institution and say, you know what, we know we've paid for 8 years. We need to have more house. Can we keep the same monthly payment and make it a 15-year loan again? That's in short what we're doing. Can we keep the same rate, same payments, unless assessed valuation goes up, and extend the life of our debt? That's kind of a poor man's version for explaining that. I'll quickly talk about the bond ballot. I think understanding it's a misnomer. It's very complicated language. Our bond ballot language is prescribed by law. So, we don't pull it out of thin air. We follow the law on this. Our bond attorneys counsel with this. Here's the real thing to point out. It talks about in there a property tax sufficient to pay debt service, and then in the same ballot it says there's no property tax rate increase. So here's in short what the bond ballot is hoping it's explaining to the public. And that is this. And actually, I think our bond ballot has a dollar amount of $311 in there. So here's what the $311 is saying to the average homeowner. If Nebo District had no debt, by the way, does that apply to us? No. So if they had no debt, and if they borrowed all $298 million at once, which also doesn't apply, but no debt and borrowed all $298 at once, then the average homeowner would see a $311 payment to Nebo School District. That's what they would see. That's what the bond ballot is seeking to explain to folks. The thing I like to make sure people understand, though, based on the other things we've seen, and you can kind of read these things while I'm talking about it, but the quickest explanation I have for folks is, if this bond does not pass, will the average homeowner see a $311 decrease in their property taxes they're paying? And the answer is no. They won't, because we're keeping the tax rate the same. Now, if we didn't need to bond again between now and 2032, then out in 2032 they'd see the $311. But again, that's presuming we wouldn't need to do a bond. And no part of me believes that we're going to last another 14 years in Nebo School District without doing a bond. So people won't see a $311 decrease if the bond does not pass. If the bond does pass, will that average homeowner see a $311 increase? And the answer is no. The tax rate's staying the same. What they will see is the life of the debt extended out a few years. Does that make sense how all of that kind of is fitting together? I hope I've done this enough now to maybe get some of these things to tie in. So really in short, this is what I'm saying to folks. I'm saying to folks, listen, if you believe that growth is coming and we need to stay on top of that, if you believe that it's important to get the 3 veteran high schools rebuilt, if you believe that addressing the middle school alignment, straight alignment pattern is a good thing, and you're grateful that we can do that without a tax rate increase, I would envision that those are probably the people that would agree with us in relation to the bond. The folks that would disagree would be folks, I would imagine, that are saying, you know, we either don't believe the growth is coming, or we don't believe that the high schools ought to be rebuilt. We don't, you know, straight alignment pattern is not that critical to us. Some argument I've heard is, and it is a tax rate increase. And I say, well, I've worked really hard to say to folks, we're extending the life of the debt. And so, you know, but folks that would be so adamant that they were concerned that they didn't want the debt or the life of the debt extended, I guess those would be folks that maybe would be in opposition to the bond. So that's maybe as quick a summary as I can give on that. We've done all of our area meetings, so no need to talk a lot there. Last day for online and voter registration is already in our rear view mirror. I actually think, from everything I know, that the ballots have been mailed. They were either mailed yesterday or today. So folks should see the ballot in their mailbox, I'm guessing sometime this weekend. So it's critical for people to be aware that the last day to postmark the mail-in ballot is November 5th. And this is a 100% mail-in ballot. We even talk in our video about there's 3 ways to vote, but in short, the reason there's 3 ways is because you're supposed to mail your ballot back in, but if you don't mail it back, if you choose to show up at an early polling location, you can turn that ballot in early instead of putting a stamp on it. And if for some reason or other you get to election day and you've either lost your ballot or just choose to turn it in, there will be a handful of election service centers in our area. It will not be like elections you're accustomed to where there's polling locations all over the place and you can easily show up on November 6th to cast your ballot. So really, we're strongly encouraging folks to get that ballot in the mail. Once they get it in the mail, then make sure that they get it postmarked and turned in by November 5th. If you haven't already registered to be a voter, it's not too late. I actually think you can register as late as the day of the election. So I don't have specifics on that, but you could look into that if you'd like. Our bond website, this is on our Nebo District homepage. All of the handouts that we have, the PowerPoint, the video, everything that we have is available on the web page. Again, working very hard to be transparent on that, and folks can go there to see whatever they would like. And then I think Lana gave some pamphlets out, and then we just remind people to make sure that they vote. There you go. That's a bond summary as quick as I can give it.